My name is Sven Kuppel-Berndt. I'm heading the UX portfolio team at SAP in Walldorf, and I'd like to give you some insights on how to implement Fiori for S4HANA in an efficient manner. Good, so let's take some of the findings we have made based on several customer projects, and I would like to share some recommendations with you today in this session. Good, so let's start with a bold statement, and that's taken from a document which describes the most important decisions you have to make when implementing S4HANA. And it's a bold statement that Fiori is the go-to user interface of S4HANA. And what does it mean? What are the implications of this? And looking into the SAP S4HANA Manifesto, which is this document mentioned below, mapping your journey to S4HANA, then we clearly state that customers who don't implement SAP Fiori or stay with SAP GUI as the primary UI will only have very limited benefits of S4HANA, because all innovations in S4HANA are only accessible by the Fiori UI. So that's one thing. That's the reason why you should take care of implementing S4HANA or Fiori for S4HANA. But the second statement is also very important. If you start to implement Fiori very selectively, and we have learned that some customer did it by doing cherry picking of some individual apps, where they see a biggest business value of those apps, and only implement those, then you get on one side a bad user experience, and you get quite high implementation costs. And in the course of the session, I will explain to you where does this case statement come from. So why should you not implement Fiori selectively to avoid exactly those problems? Now let's start with this innovation topic. So what is our focus with S4HANA compared to ERP? Basically, we want to evolve S4HANA to an intelligent ERP system. This means on one side, process intelligence or intelligent processes, and on the other side, an intelligent user experience. So the majority of our investments we are doing are innovations in things you couldn't do before with ERP. On the intelligent process side, those are things like robotic process automation, which Jürgen mentioned today in the session, or machine learning, or new type of processes. And with regard to user experience, those are working patterns like exception management or insight to action, or next generation assistants like Copilot, which also supports some natural language processing. So those new ways of working are the target for our investments into S4HANA. And this on the other side means our goal is not to replace just the old GUI transactions by Fiori apps, because SAP Fiori is much, much more than Fiori apps built with UI5. Many people think that Fiori equals Fiori apps. And therefore we always get the question, do you cover meanwhile all GUI transactions by Fiori apps? And the clear answer is no, it's even not our goal. Because Fiori is much, much more than this. So let's understand what is SAP Fiori. First, Fiori is just a design system. It describes some basic patterns, some basic standards on how a user interface should look like. So fonts, colors, button placement, generic controls, those kind of things. And this design system can be implemented in multiple technologies, and it is in fact also implemented in multiple technologies. So in S4HANA we implement those things with SAP UI5, but also with GUI, the Visual Fiori themed web GUI, also the WebDimpler applications, but other products of SAP also build Fiori UIs with React or other frameworks. So Fiori itself is independent of a technology. In particular for S4HANA, the key elements for Fiori are then the Fiori Launchpad, which provides a single access point to the functionality and is the shell for the Fiori user experience. Then for sure we also have the Fiori apps, which are typically tailored for a specific user task, and we have the Fiori theme for the classic UI, so GUI transactions and Web2Pre applications, to provide a visual harmonization. So why is this relevant? Why all those things? Coming back to my topic of innovation, we want to offer with S4HANA a new way of working. That's our focus, not just a replacement of the old GUI transactions. And if you look into the GUI transaction, how do you work with GUI? There's a typical behavior. You start a GUI transaction. If you want to use another one, you do /n T-code, /n T-code, /n T-code. You jump from app to app via launching apps individually. In Fiori, we have a navigation network of apps. So it's like in the internet. You want to explore something, you click on a link and you navigate to the next app. So therefore, this whole thing is a network of interconnected apps. And how to achieve this, that's depicted here. So basically, if we just start with the existing GUI transactions and Web2Pre application and just look which user role uses what of those transactions. Because we don't want to just replace the old transactions. Then you see, as Fiori is a role-based approach, there are different functionalities used by different users or different user roles, depicted here by the different colors. And when we then implement or design Fiori apps, we look at really what is needed by this user role for this specific task. And we simplify along the use cases. So it might be that we do a decomposition. So one transaction is decomposed into multiple smaller Fiori apps. In other cases, we do a recomposition. Just taking parts of 2 transactions or 3 transactions, bring it into one Fiori app. But a lot of stuff will just simply remain in GUI. We don't build any Fiori app for this because we want to keep the special cases. If we want to simplify the user work, it doesn't make sense to get the same complexity again, which we had with GUI. So therefore, we keep a lot of stuff just in GUI. But as I mentioned, our focus is on intelligence and innovation. So therefore, on top of this, around 50% of the apps which you find in the Fiori apps library for Fiori are apps that cover use cases which were not even part of a GUI transaction. So all those analytical apps, for example, overview pages, you didn't see this before. There is no corresponding GUI transaction for this. Now, how to get this all to a user? We put all the transactions and Fiori apps which belong to one user in a user role and create Fiori Launchpad content for this. Fiori Launchpad content at the end defines the navigation network for a user, a role-specific navigation network. And that's quite important, and this is also the part that makes things a little bit complicated because that's fundamentally different to everything you know from the past, especially looking into authorization management. Authorization management was done in the past based on functional authorizations. Now you have to do a role-based authorization management, starting really from an end-user perspective. Okay, to complement this now, the Fiori Launchpad is the shell, the single access point into this. And this shell also offers some additional services which we didn't have before. For example, a search which does an enterprise search in the complete system. Personalization options, where you can personalize your homepage, you can save your settings, etc. Or collaboration via Copilot, where you can simply take a screenshot and send it to somebody, and instead of a picture, he really gets a functional link which you can open, etc., etc. So there are many things, default values. So there are many things which are just coming with the Fiori Launchpad as a shell. And even if you don't have any Fiori app, it is already a value to have the Fiori Launchpad in place. So that's the overall concept, how we have designed the user experience for S4HANA. And now what does it mean for implementation? If you start to implement Fiori besides the GUI world, so for example, you did a technical upgrade, your users still are working in the GUI world, and then you start to think of, okay, now I select some Fiori apps and implement those Fiori apps here on the right side. This browser-based access is a Fiori-only world. What does it mean then? For an end user, it means he has 2 entry points, because he needs X% of his functionality, maybe 70, what have you. He has to log on to the GUI and work there. and for some other parts of the functionality he has to log on again via a browser, access those things, and if he needs to interconnect some things, he is doing copy and paste of numbers, selection criteria between those two worlds. That's the worst user experience you can imagine. That's not like an integrated systems, because it looks and feels like two systems. And that's the reason why we say if you do selective implementation, you get a bad user experience. The approach which we recommend and which we have designed with S4HANA is this picture here on the right side, which we name the pyramid approach. And this starts with what is the access point for the system, the technical one, and this is either the business client or the web browser, or we recommend the web browser, but for those customers who still want to have a local client, you can use a business client. And in both cases, the first thing the user sees is the Fiori Launchpad. And from there, the user can then drill down into the full functional scope relevant for this role. So starting with the Fiori Launchpad, where he sees the tiles. Tiles already show the most important information. The tiles already helps the users to find out what he needs to focus on. Then on the second layer, or middle layer of this pyramid, we have those new working patterns like overview pages, analytical list reports, all those kind of things that helps the users to find out where he needs to focus his work on. And on the lowest level, we have the individual task-oriented UIs, which are then either Fiori UI5 apps or classical transactions, the GUI transactions, or the WebDimper applications. And all of this is interconnected via a navigation network. So you can simply navigate via forward navigation from one to the other. So those pyramids we offer for many, many business roles, so several hundred of them. So there are different roles, the pyramids for different user roles. I think here's just a list, and I don't want to read through them, but you see most of the business functionality offered in S4HANA is also covered with Launchpad content, and this Launchpad content is delivered as template for a implementation project. How do you start now with this? And in the past, if you wanted to activate those roles, it was quite cumbersome with the tools we have offered. Meanwhile, we have some new tools, which I would like to present to you now. And the first thing is you should do the initial scoping based on roles. So you should not start selecting individual apps, but rather select the roles you want to activate. Then we recommend to take a sandbox system off your system, for example, a copy of production, put it into a sandbox, and then use the task list for rapid activation. And those task lists will immediately activate the complete navigation network and generate custom roles, including a test user that you immediately can start trying this out. This is then the basis for a fit gap analysis, where you then really start to think about, okay, this role fits or this part doesn't fit, I have to split it, I have to adjust it to my organization, whatever you need to do, which is typically part of an implementation project, and then you adjust the content to your needs. Still keeping in mind you want to have a single entry point and a complete navigation network for a specific user role. Okay. So there are several tools for this. And for this initial scoping, we have the apps library, Fiori Apps Reference Library. I think it's available for quite a while. But we also have some new tools like the Readiness Check 2.0, which also helps you to identify the roles which are relevant for you. Then the task list for rapid activation help you to automate the activation. So you just select the roles you want to have, and then you click on a button, and within minutes you really get those complete navigation network and roles activated and the apps activated. And the last step is then to adjust it to your needs. And for this we have the new Fiori Launchpad Content Manager, which was released in the first version just 1st of July, which is a tool for mass adaptation of catalogs. So for those of you who know the FLPD, which is a quite cumbersome tool if you really want to deal with masses of content or masses of apps. So the Fiori Launchpad Content Manager is exactly designed for this purpose. To sum it up, Fiori is the go-to user interface, as I mentioned, for S4HANA. So please don't stay with SAP GUI as a primary user interface for S4HANA, because all innovations and the new user experience only come with SAP Fiori. Don't do cherry picking of individual apps and selective implementation of apps, because experience shows that this is very expensive and very effort intensive, and Fiori apps are not designed to be used individually. They are designed to be used in a navigation network, so therefore picking individual apps doesn't help. Implement Fiori along business roles and not by process, which also some people think and should do, yeah. But process is a totally different dimension. It's from an integration perspective, a process is important, but from an end user perspective, a process is totally irrelevant. Many processes touch the same user. The role is a leading dimension for a user. And if you don't want to do a big bang, we recommend to do it role by role. Yeah? So you don't have to implement Fiori for all roles at once. You can really start role by role, which is basically user group by user group. And to do this cost efficient, we recommend to use the new task list for the rapid activation and the new Launchpad content manager, because those new tools help to speed up implementation based on SAP delivered standard or template roles. There's a lot of additional information available around this whole topic, and thank you very much.